Hello everyone, Marjorie Roman here, and we have the one and only Coach Dan to help us grow our businesses through franchise systems. Thank you so much for coming over today.
Always a pleasure to talk about franchising and how we can grow our businesses and our freedom.
That's true. And today we're going to talk about the franchise trends. And this is based on the list, the 500 top franchises that showed up on a list on the 2022 version of the Entrepreneurs Magazine. So first of all, with the current market that we're in and how we had the pandemic and how we are having some crazy times also financially in the country, do you see more brick and mortar franchises being opened or more of the home-based office ones?
You know, that's interesting because everybody's thinking about, how can I stay home and open up a business and do my online business? And there's so many people that get excited about and they're ordering these courses and they're ordering these little programs on how to open up their own business and do an online business. But when you look at all of them as a whole, what's their success rate? It's still that 20%, roughly that 20% or less success rate in those businesses. That's the rate when you start your own business from scratch versus the franchise world where it's 80 to 90%. It's a reverse of that. You have a much bigger chance of success on that. So I'm excited about this topic of trending because, you know, in the online world, we're thinking everything has to be online, and that's the direction to go. Certainly that's a big piece of business, but still most of the business is done in the brick and mortar. And you don't see any slowdown in the brick and mortar type businesses, whether it's food, services, and things like that. People still go to those places and they still happen. So sure, there's some really cool online or home-based type franchises that have popped up over the years, and there's those trends, and those are great. But with those types of businesses, we're not seeing as many systematized businesses. It still depends only on that person. Usually, unless you've got a sales team or you can replicate yourself somehow in a stay-at-home online type business or a stay-at-home business, even a franchise, it's usually you. And so you're trading your time for money once again. Once in a while, you can build something that allows you to receive some residual income down the road. But once again, you want to be able to get to a point where you can leverage your time. And so I think a lot of people still are trending toward the brick and mortar because what happens is you've got employees there working the system that they've been taught and trained to do. And that allows you as the franchisee to do more with your time. So once you get your first one up and running, and it's running smoothly, now you can back away. You're more semi-absentee owned. You're putting the 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week into it. And then you get your second one, third one, and fourth one up and running. And pretty soon you have a general manager that's running it all for you. And I've seen some people actually pretty much not walk away, but they're not having to spend a lot of time with that. So that residual or that ongoing income allows you to have more freedom and more time. And I see a lot more of those brick and mortars that are allowing people to do that versus the single units. Now, if you happen to hit on big, but that's rare that you hit some type of online business that cranks and all of a sudden you turn it on almost on autopilot and all the orders start popping in. It's still a harder business. It's a hard business model. And it's a much lower success rate with that versus a franchise.
That's right. And it's incredible how all of these brick and mortars, even though we're in the age of technology, they are still so important for all of us as customers.
One thing about the technology, though, is the more successful brick and mortars have technology in the background. They all pretty much rely on that proven and exclusive software system that they've created, which helps the customer to have a better experience so that they can grow. So there's always that technology behind it, but it's still businesses, relationships. People still like to sometimes come in and meet people and buy their sandwich or whatever.
That's right. And it's funny how you look at all of these franchises that are brick and mortar, and it's the ones that you expect the least to have technology, the ones that have the best technology, which is crazy.
Right.
So you could have someone that does garage door repairs, and they happen to have a super awesome automated system for the customers to just reach out to people and start asking for a request to have their doors repaired. And that gives an amazing customer service to them, just because they have all of those software and the processes implemented already to give their customers the best service possible. Now, when it comes to brick and mortars, we have seen quite a bit of like food franchises also. After this pandemic and all the economic crises that we've been having, have you seen any new implementations, any new systems that they have started to work on in order to survive these times?
Well, they've had to, obviously. And I'll just say this, the food franchises that I work with during the pandemic last year, the ones that I work with had their best year ever.
Woo.
Even during the pandemic. And that's because they innovated. And that's because what they have is in the power of franchising, you're able to draw upon all these different resources in buying power. And it's where there were some independent or unaffiliated. I was talking to a store owner the other day who's not a franchise. And he says during the pandemic, he was only getting maybe 65% of the orders that he was bringing in to put inventory in his store. I mean, how do you run a business where your inventories are low? And obviously, if your inventories are low, you're not going to be able to sell as much. People aren't going to buy as much. But when your inventories are full and you can rely on that buying power that comes from the franchise, that allows you to succeed more so than anyone else. And so people are going to remember that, and they're going to come back to you, and they're going to patronize your business more. So we've seen that the buying power, and even when there's been a scarcity of goods and services, franchises usually have been able to come out on top. The other thing that happens is these franchisors and along with their franchisees are able to innovate. And so a lot of them have had to, if you've seen, you all done it probably, the curbside delivery or more delivery through services like Grubhub and things like that in the food world. So they've had to innovate and do things like that, but people still have to eat. And they still love eating out. Once they've got into that habit of eating out, they usually don't change. Even during the pandemic, they didn't change. In fact, more so because they needed that peace of mind and that comfort just to get through that. And so they often ordered that comfort food, which allowed them to, those franchisees to still succeed. Now, some of the service businesses, I'll just talk about that real quick. Some of those in the beginning, hair care, for example, massage businesses, those had to shut down for a little bit. And so there were some of those that struggled. And they weren't succeeding as much as they were. They recovered and they came back, but there were several that actually went out of business because of that.
Gotcha. And yeah, it's incredible how the ones that succeeded actually ended up doing it because they had a system that the franchisor sent out to all the tiny little franchisees across the globe, so they could generate profits, even though there were a couple of regulations that the government currently had. Now, what are some of the other trends that you are seeing with new industries opening up? I know that you mentioned a couple of medical franchises, and also I know that there are some counseling and tutoring, educational kind of franchises. Can you tell us more about those ones?
Yeah, those are always interesting trends because those two particular industries or areas that you've just talked about are there. When you look at baby boomers, we're still around. I'm one of them, and and so we get out there and we're thinking, okay, what's going to benefit us best? And the regenerative health area. Those have been huge over the past few years because we start get aches and pains. We don't necessarily want to buy prevention. We want to buy pain relief. And so there's things out there that will reduce our pain and take away pain and help us and so we don't age as fast and things like that. Those are the big trends. The baby boomers are still a big piece of this. I know the millennials are up and coming and they're more of the trendy things that are out there. But still, those health-related type businesses are huge. And wellness, and that continues to grow. It's a huge industry with not as many players in the franchise worlds as there could be to take advantage of those trillions of dollars that are being spent on health. I mean, you look at health and wellness, just in the United States alone, or actually let's use a worldwide number. It's like it's growing. It's over $4 trillion that's spent on health and wellness, aging, beauty, and that type of thing. $4 trillion. And even the United States is close to over $1 trillion. And then the health business is, or the medical business is even bigger than that. But $1 trillion in the United States versus all of fast food is less than 500 million. So it's bigger than fast food. And look at all the players out there in fast food versus the few amount of players in the health and wellness business. And if you hit that just right, it's huge. And also you can cater to the millennials because they're looking to perform better in their athletic performances. They're looking at performing and doing better overall in health. That just seems to be one of the big trends out there. And then when you look at the educational business, now those millennials have grown up and they're starting to have their own children. And myself as a grandfather, I love this, that my grandchildren are involved with educational type things. They're learning how to dance, and they're learning sports, and they're learning how to do artwork, and they're learning how to do computer skills, all those different types of franchises. Parents want their children to have that advantage. They'll pay extra for that when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, just to have that experience and go to this camp or that camp so that they're educated and trained so they have the advantage when they get to be an adult. It starts young. Parents gladly pay that money so that their children can have that advantage. And there's more and more children out there. So that is a huge aspect of the world of franchising.
That's right. And it's interesting how also education became a franchise over the past few years. Because I remember seeing a few branches here in Utah from something called Mathnasium, which is kind of like a gymnasium, but for math, where they would teach kids how to solve their homework that they had, that they couldn't understand in class. They would have tutors. But that system has grown so much that now there are like franchises that teach kids in so many different aspects. It doesn't have to be necessarily extracurricular activities such as like dancing or sports, but it can also be classes that they just don't understand within their subjects in their schools. Also, I was looking at a couple of franchise opportunities that opened up for counseling high school students into college. How do they get ready for an SAT? How do they get ready for the financial options that they have in college? How to get ready for the classes and the scheduling of them when they get to college? So it's really cool how education has also become a new niche within the world of franchises. It was also really cool how you mentioned we have new generations coming up, generations from the past that are still popping. What about Gen Z and millennials? Have you seen more investors coming from that age range lately?
Well, lately, yes, especially working with your group, Marjorie, and your team, and seeing the age groups that you're attracting. Obviously, you're attracting all age groups in your programs, but you're more particular. A lot of the younger people coming in because they want something better. Those that are coming out, they see the opportunity here, and we're attracting a lot of those. Now, one of the challenges is some of them may not have all the funds that they need, but a lot of them do. They've done very well with themselves, and so they want to get something better in their lives, and they're investing into franchises and other things. So we're seeing more and more of that because they want to have that system to follow. They want that guidance, and they want to make sure that they succeed, and they're a little more careful on how they analyze a business, and we're able to teach them and advise them every step of the way. So it's a big piece of the up and coming franchise world, and I hope we get more and more of those millennials and that generation coming on board, because they're the key to the future of the franchising world and business world that helps drive our economy in this country and other countries.
That's right. And I feel like in the case of millennials and Gen Z age range, the reason why they're more interested in investing instead of just like the typical pathway is because they have seen the typical pathway. Then what's that pathway? It's like you start in college, then you graduate, then you try to pay your student debt by working so many years. Then after working so many years, when you're super, super old, you cannot even move out of your bed. That's when they're like, oh, now I can finally retire. I'm done paying all my debt. I can take these last couple $1,000 and try to enjoy my retirement. That path doesn't work anymore for our generation. So I feel like that's also a really good factor that it's driving all of these newer generations into looking at different ways that they can utilize their money into something that is going to produce even more profits along the way, that is going to help sustain that financial freedom and lifestyle that they want for them and their families in the future. Now, Another of the trends that we saw on this list is the new and emerging franchises. So what are some of the new and emerging franchises that you have seen popping up lately?
Well, okay, let's talk about there's existing franchise companies that have been around a long time. Those are usually harder to qualify for and harder to find a location for, although that's is possible. I remember talking to my niece a few years ago when Orange Theory was just booming. That's the fitness craze. It was built into $1 billion company. It was exciting. But all of the whole country, she was living up in Washington, and out of the whole country, the only place left in the whole country at that particular time was Wyoming. So she was going to have to move to Wyoming to be able to open one up. So sometimes those great franchise opportunities we see out there are phenomenal. We want to get on the bandwagon, but it's too late oftentimes. So where I've specialized in is what's called the emerging or even micro-emerging. More of the micro-emerging is when there's maybe only 2, 3, 4 locations, maybe 10 locations already up and running, but they have a proven system. Now, there might be a little bit more risk in those, but I found that that's worth it because there's a system, there's support, there's already been that success around. So why? And there's a little more flexibility in that so that we have the ability to be more flexible in who we are in setting up the franchise, even though that system is in place, but allows us to be in the forefront in the beginning and succeed because there is a system that we follow. And so that's where I've specialized in those micro-emerging brands, which allows me to succeed in a way that's bigger. And so those are the ones that I recommend, but you have to know where to look for them. You have to know the right people, and you have to know the people behind them to make sure that they are the right franchise for you so that you can succeed. And that's where our advisors come in, where we can help you see what would fit you the best.
That's right. And you never know. I mean, those small franchises, they could grow really big. Like, I still remember how Crumble Cookies used to be a smaller franchise. Like, and they would only do really huge cookies, and that was pretty much it. And yeah, I mean, people would think, oh, yeah, that's just cookies and nothing big is going to happen. A couple years later, now we see how Crumble has like so many franchises in so many states, almost all the states within the US. So you never know. Who knows if that micro-emerging franchise that you're jumping on, maybe it becomes the next vegan McDonald's in the world. So you should be looking into those ones as well. Thank you so much again, Dan. And thank you to our audience. And whichever franchise you decide to invest, either if it's a more established brand or an emerging one, make sure that you get with an advisor, and they are more than happy to help you get the best fit for you and your business. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.